morning, Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky. TV Toastmasters Club 9523 is now in order. This is our new year, and I'd like to start out the new year by making a toast to all our TV Toastmasters and our viewing audience. May all your dreams and goals come true in 2009. And my first goal was not to say 2008, so I'm already there. It is the first of the year, and of course, during this time of year, we often make resolutions. And just real quick, my resolution is to be more like a 2-year-old. I have a 2-year-old son, and I notice a couple things that 2-year-olds do, which are just, they handle life much better than us 40 and 41-year-olds do in some aspects. For one thing, my son wakes up in the morning, and all 2-year-olds are like this. They treat each day like an adventure. They wake up, they're excited, they're ready to go. When I see him in the morning, I don't tell him to have a good day. I tell him to have a big day, and he does that every day. Secondly, they don't sweat the small stuff. A 2-year-old doesn't worry about what might happen. If they hit their hand in the door, they cry and they're sad. But they don't think, I might hit my hand in the door in the next hour. As adults, we obsess about everything that might happen and don't worry about the things that actually do happen. And if we all do that, I think we'll all be a lot happier, and 2009 will be a lot more successful. But with that, and you'll see various members come up as we get through our meeting today, and they will talk about their resolutions and also will make toasts to the new year. But with that, I'd also like to welcome a couple guests we have in the audience with us today. To begin with, I'd like to welcome Roy Roberts. This is Roy's first Toastmaster meeting. Roy, thanks for joining us. And also, I'd like to welcome Joe Schwerling. And Joe's one of our regular guests, but we're always glad to see Joe with us. And with that, I'd also like to welcome you and the viewing audience down to join us. We meet the third Saturday of every month. We meet at the Anderson Center, which is located on 7850 5 Mile Road in Anderson Township. And with that, I'd like to introduce our Toastmaster for this meeting. Please welcome Rick Barron.
Welcome, Toastmasters, guests, and our TV viewing audience. My role today is to host the meeting, to introduce the speakers and the various roles that we have within the Toastmasters meeting. Also, to make the meeting fun and exciting, and ultimately to keep you, our TV audience, from changing the channel in between speakers. The theme for our meeting today is New Year's resolutions. Can I ask you a question? What was your 2008 New Year's resolution? Today, we've got a powerful lineup of speakers for you. Each will dazzle and impress you with their skills and dedication. But first, I think we've all heard that we would rather die than be in front of a crowd. But for those of us that are willing to accept the challenge, how we speak is often more important than what we say. It's my pleasure to introduce Sheila Mudd Baker, who will provide us the word for the day and serve as our grammarian for the meeting.
The word for the day, of course, is resolution, and I shall put it up here. The purpose of the word of the day is to use that word as often as you can without seeming too silly. Now, let me give you a definition of resolution. This is from Torment Webster's Illustrated Encyclopedic Dictionary. That's because my computer's down and I couldn't get it off the computer. 1990. I've had this book for 18 years. The state or quality of being resolute. Firm determination. The act of resolving to do something. A course of action determined or decided upon. A formal statement of a decision or expression of an opinion put before or adopted by an assembly, such as United Nations resolution. The action or process of separating or reducing something into its constituent parts, such as the resolution to have an action plan in order to meet a particular goal. Well, let me give you a sample of the use of resolution. It is my resolution that in 2009, I will snack whenever I feel like it. I will exercise no more than 3 days a week. I will overspend, as I always have, and therefore keep the economy going. I will be as kind to myself as I possibly can, considering that I often forget that I need more sleep and I need to do less. So, here are my resolutions, and I believe I shall achieve them. I will be part of the 8%. And actually, I think it's great that 8% of the people do keep their resolutions. That's a lot of people. Think about all those people who resolve to do things, and nearly everyone I talk to says, oh, I made resolutions in 2006 and 2007 and 2008. They were the same resolutions. I didn't keep any of them. To be able to keep a resolution makes everyone else believe it's possible. That's why we have resolutions. We always believe it's possible. We're going to get smarter, better, thinner, happier, younger. Well, okay, so not so young. But we always believe that there's hope for us. And I will say that in 2007, I made some resolutions, and by the end of 2008, I actually achieved them. However, I made them on January 2007. It took me almost a full 2 years. So make a resolution anyway. You might achieve it eventually. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Sheila. My resolution is to do the best I can for you up here today. Have you ever been asked to speak on a topic that you knew very little about on really short notice? If the prospect of extemporaneous speaking makes your blood run ice cold, then pay special attention. Tiffany Everett will challenge 3 people today to think on their feet as our Tabletopics master. Tiffany?
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. My resolution this past year was to be a better aunt, and if you ask my niece and nephew, they would say most definitely. Today I'm going to challenge 3 people with a question that I have picked in my brain that I'd like to hear their answer. The first person I'm going to ask to come up here is Gordon Kelly. Gordon, tell us about a resolution you made last year that you didn't follow through with.
Thank you. Last year, I made probably multiple resolutions versus one. I never really seem to just make one because one doesn't cover all the things I need to do. One of the things I remember making a resolution on was to lose weight. However, I really didn't do that. So that's one failed resolution. I'm sure I've made several others. I always make a resolution to save more money. But this year, I think what my resolution is going to be. I've been thinking about this now for some time, and not because it's a new year coming up, just because of life. And I have several grandkids, and particularly I have 3 grandsons. And I just keep thinking to myself, because I like to golf, get out and spend time by myself golfing or with other men that I know. And I keep thinking, you know, it's time to grow up. You're a little bit older. You need to spend time with those little kids. Well, driving up here this morning, phone rang, cell phone rang, I answered the phone, and it was actually my son's phone. But nobody's on the other line for a couple of seconds, and I realized, okay, you know, I can hear my grandson talking. He's like, Papa, you know, what's going on? And I'm thinking, what's going on with you? And he says, well, I'm the only one awake. I'm the only one up. So I said, well, where's everybody else at? He says, well, and I didn't understand this. I got to find out what he meant by this. He says, I called Mommy, but she's not answering the phone. And I'm thinking, Mommy's right there in the house, you know. What's he talking about? So I think they know he gets up real early, so they just lock the door so he'll leave him alone. So he turns around and tries to call him. So then I said, well, how about your daddy? He says, well, I'm on his phone. So I guess his daddy's the same thing. I don't know. But my resolution for the upcoming years, actually, is going to be to spend more time with grandsons and granddaughters and give them what I think I know about life anyway. Thank you.
Thank you. My second question today is going to go to Don. Don, tell us about a resolution that you've made in the past that you've kept and you are very proud of.
Well, that's a loaded question, or request. I don't know as I've made any resolution that I've kept in the past, so it's going to be difficult maybe to tell you about one that I've made in the past and I've kept. I can tell you some qualities of a resolution, perhaps, if I can remember some of them. One of the qualities of a resolution is that it's possible. If you make a resolution that's impossible or perhaps too difficult, you're not going to be able to meet that resolution or make that resolution or keep the resolution. Another quality of a resolution would be that it's achievable, perhaps in a relatively short period of time. If it's going to take 10 years or 5 years, the tendency is that it's going to be kind of forgotten about or seen as too long of an uphill climb to be able to continually keep that resolution or continually keep it in your mind or keep it as a something that you really want to do. Another quality of a resolution is that that you have a commitment to do it. So there are various levels of commitment, like from the point of I might do it, I maybe will do it, perhaps I will do it, I think I'm going to do it, yeah, I'll do it, to by golly, I'm going to get this done, no matter what. Those are different degrees of commitment, so you have to need to make a strong commitment in order for it to continue to its achievement, to its ultimate, that you reach your ultimate goal. Okay, well, thank you very much, Mrs. Toastmaster.
My final question for today is going to go to Darren Henderson. Darren, every year we get to see Dick Clark with the big Times Square ball. Would you ever see yourself with the millions of people up in New York City? And if you were there, what would you be doing with them?
Thank you, Tiffany, fellow Toastmasters. I cannot see myself in New York City for the Times Square dropping of the ball. And the reason is, whenever I see that on television, I think of two things. One, everyone's drunk out of their mind. Two, there's so many people there, it probably takes 2 hours to get to wherever they need to get to after the event's over. And three, it always seems extremely cold. So even though it does seem somewhat exciting, I don't really see myself ever going to New York City to participate in that particular parade or those festivities. I do like a good New Year's Eve party, and unfortunately, it's been several years since I've been to a good New Year's Eve party. In years past, a group of friends and myself and other people would get together and have. I've been to fairly large New Year's Eve parties before, and there's always a good time to be had. But over the past couple of years, with the kid at home, we just haven't really done much on New Year's Eve other than maybe break out a bottle of wine and drink that and have something to eat. But we really haven't made a big deal out of it. But once he gets older, we can drop him off with a babysitter. Maybe we'll try that. And maybe this year's the year. But no, I don't see myself ever going to New York City for the dropping of the ball.
I would like to thank all of our participants for taking part today in our table topics and return control of our meeting back to our Toastmaster, Rick Barron.
Thank you, Tiffany. Great topic. Thanks, Tiffany, and each of our brave members willing to come up for that extemporaneous speech. Now you're in for a great treat. Our club president, Darren Henderson, has a very modest proposal for you. He'll be speaking from the Toastmasters Persuasive Speaking Manual with the objective of addressing the opposition. Club members select topics from various themed Toastmaster manuals, and as they give speeches, they escalate for higher and higher distinction within the club. Darren's objective today is to talk on a controversial subject that persuades you to accept his point of view. And there'll be an opportunity for question and answers afterwards. Darren Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and our guests. 3 weeks ago, I paid $1.45 for a gallon of gas. I was upset. I was mad. Things are going in the wrong direction. I mean, how are things going to get better if gas continues to be so cheap? Yes, I said it, fellow Toastmasters. I would rather pay $2.45 for a gallon of gas instead of $1.45 under the right circumstances. The reason is that I believe we will never do the right thing to reform our transportation and fuel infrastructure unless we are forced to do it by economic forces. In other words, we will never do the right thing just because it's the right thing. In a few minutes, I will explain my plan to help change our behavior, benefit our economy, benefit our environment, and make us safer. First, let me tell you how I came to my conclusions about how we treat our cars and how we treat our driving behavior. Fellow Toastmasters, I am a reformed gasaholic. Over the past 12 years, I was a heavy gas user. Until 1 year ago, I drove over 35,000 miles per year for over 10 years. The reason is that I worked over 50 miles from home. I was one of the worst offenders in a nation of gas-guzzling felons. The high gas prices were a contributing factor to my decision to change jobs a year ago. I now work 20 miles from home, and I consume over 60% less gas than I did previously. I believe that the only way for our nation to reduce our gas usage is to change our driving and commuting habits. Over the years, it's been proven that it won't be done just by hoping. In the 1970s, during the gas crisis of the 70s, conservation efforts made a big impact towards reducing our gas usage. But as gas prices decreased during the 80s and 90s, we really remained stagnant and we didn't make much progress. Over the past 10 years, we've seen the popularity of the mega SUVs and the mega pickup trucks, and they have horrible gas mileage. I have a couple questions for you. When you see someone in one of the big mega SUVs, how often do you see one driver and no passengers? And these cars fit 8 to 10 people. When you see someone in one of the mega pickups, how often do they have something in a cargo bed, or how often are they pulling a truck? I mean a boat or some other type of vehicle. Not very often. I know, I was an offender. During the time when I drove 100 miles per day, I actually could have carpooled. There were people I worked with who lived in northern Kentucky, but I chose not to because it wasn't convenient. I'm sure a lot of us are in that same boat. And now we have a test case over the past 2 years. As gas prices have skyrocketed to unprecedented levels, we've seen the behavior of drivers change. In a study earlier this year, the Congressional Budget Office found that for each 50-cent increase in the price of gas, the number of freeway trips declined by 0.7%. So people are driving less as gas prices increase, which makes sense. Recent evidence also shows that drivers slow down when gas is more expensive. The most efficient speed range for most cars is between 35 and 60. Once you get up to 65 and 70, you begin to lose a lot of efficiency. There are also websites now that are devoted to people who try to maximize their gas mileage down to the nth degree. So it is making a difference. High gas prices have also forced us to make different buying decisions. Over the past years, consumers have actually moved away from the mega SUVs and the mega pickups, and they're buying more four-cylinder cars and more hybrids. Matter of fact, I saw Joe in a new car the other day, even though he doesn't realize that. And it was a four-cylinder car as far as I can tell. That is one reason why the big three automakers are now in financial distress. Based on the sales of cars and trucks, it is obvious that the gas prices are having an impact on our buying decisions. It's also been proven that higher gas prices will result in different decisions made by drivers and consumers. Now the question is, how do we make that happen? I'm not proposing that we should continue to hope for higher gas prices so that Exxon can make more money. I mean, they made $12 billion in 1 quarter last year or this year. They don't need more profits. No, I hope that we can keep the retail cost of gas as low as possible. But I do propose putting into place a gas tax. I know that's a dirty little word, but yes, a gas tax that will create a floor that will help ensure that gas, as it gets cheaper, does not become so cheap that we change that behavior, the behavior improvements that we've seen over the course of the last year. The current federal gas tax is 18.4 cents per gallon, which sounds like a lot, but 18.4 cents, when you look at the price of gas being $2 or $3, is actually not a huge percentage of the cost. Now, this does not need to be a tax increase, because this proposal is not really meant to raise money. It's really meant to change people's behavior. We could basically offset that proposed tax increase with a tax decrease in either personal property taxes or income taxes or payroll taxes, but basically we could be certain to offset whatever increase with the gas tax we put into place by decreasing some other tax. By increasing the tax, it will have a positive long-term benefits to our economy, the environment, and our national security. Our auto industry is already lagging behind foreign competitors because, quite honestly, they didn't put money into developing high gas mileage cars, or not as much money as some of the foreign competitors have. By refocusing our economy on fuel-efficient vehicles, we will place our domestic industry in a more competitive position for the futures. You know, we also currently buy much of our oil from countries which, quite frankly, do not like us and, quite frankly, are sometimes our enemies on the field of battle. And also, we commit significant military resources towards trying to stabilize the Middle East and trying to make sure that we ensure the smooth supply of oil from the Middle East. Also, it goes without saying that these efforts will definitely help improve the environment. There's little doubt in the mind of most scientists that global warming is a real condition. The long-term effects are not completely known, but quite frankly, they frighten me just as much as some of the national security risks that our nation currently faces. I realize there are several arguments against raising the gas tax. One is that with the economy in such bad shape, we can't afford a tax increase. I actually agree with this point. That's why I propose that any gas tax increase must be coupled with an equivalent decrease in some other type of taxation. Also, if we have to, we can even delay this until the economy strengthens. The other argument is that we should let markets determine the price of gas. Let the markets regulate themselves. Really? I mean, it really hasn't worked that well over the past couple of years. Over the past 20 years, we really haven't made that much progress in improving our fuel efficiency. Now, I'm generally someone who doesn't like to manipulate the marketplace, but I do make an exception in this case. We must move the needle in a big way over the next decade in order to move away from fossil fuels. The status quo has not worked. Increasing the gas tax will result in more fuel-efficient cars, more carpooling, more mass transit, and better long-term economic, environmental, and national security prospects for our country. Now, I realize this is not a popular cause. This makes me about as popular as a Wall Street executive or a corrupt Illinois governor. I'm asking you to pay $2.75 when you leave here today instead of $1.75 for a gallon of gas. But I do ask you to keep an open mind, and if you agree with me, join me in letting your members of Congress and your senators know that you support this effort. I fear that if we don't do something in regards to our energy situation, soon we will do irreparable harm to our nation's economy, do irreparable harm to our world, the world's environment, and also put ourselves at national security risk. Please, let's not make that mistake. Well, thank you, and please at least listen to and consider my modest proposal. Mr. Toastmaster?
Thank you, Darren.
We have 30 minutes left.
Interesting proposal. I've had an opportunity to drive overseas, and I've seen the impact of what double or triple gas prices that they pay over there has in improving the roads and ultimately bringing everybody mass transit. If you think you might have a little trouble deciding on what your New Year's resolution will be, or you need some help in how to come up with one, our next speaker is just for you. Linda has got some powerful intentions on how you can develop your 2009 resolution. Linda Ketchum has completed her Advanced Communicator Silver and her Advanced Leader Bronze. She's well on the way to completing her Gold. She's the current Area 57 governor, and her speech today is the 8th from the Second Competent Communicator Manual. So we are so blessed to have her with us today. Her objective is to get comfortable with visual aids, and she will provide us some help in coming up with our 2009 resolutions. Linda?
Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, guests in the audience, and our guests at home. I am actually one of the 8% of the nation that generally achieves my intentions. And I use the word intention specifically because I think we use resolution as an idea of what we might do if it's convenient. To me, an intention is something that I put my entire attitude and power behind. It is something that I truly intend to do. Gordon shared that one of his resolutions, consistently, he shares one that I have had many, many times, which is to lose weight. What I have realized is to lose weight is not really my intention. When I write it down, I do so because I believe I need to. It would make my doctor happy. It would make my closet happy. And it's just one of those nice things to do. But I have no power and emotion behind it. For me to achieve an intention, I need to put my entire being behind it. So this time of year, or any time it's time to set new intentions, I pick up my pen and pad, I find a comfortable place, and I sit down and I get quiet. I meditate, but for those of you who don't meditate, take some time to center yourself and just sit there quietly and think about what are my greatest desires. If you've always wanted to take a vacation to South America and see some of the Incan ruins, write it down. The more specifically you write it down, the greater your emotion behind it. If you've wanted to wear a size, if you're a woman and you've wanted to wear a size 6 pair of pants or a size 0, write it down. Write what it would feel like to have that toned, trim, vivacious body. Write it down. If you want to clean your house and have it sparkle, put down what a clean room looks like. And just list everything you can think about that you want to do. The fun things, put them first. If you've always wanted to take a cruise to Alaska, which I did last year and it was awesome, it was on my goal list, and I did it. On the list I'm about to show you, it says a vacation to Mexico. I will be doing that because I actually won a week in a friend's condo in Mexico. I will be going in October. List the things you want to do. Put the most detail that you can think of. And after you've made a list, and the greatest thing to do is to get a little book and make it your intention list. I like a small one because I like to carry it with me. And every time a new idea shows up, I write it down. And then there comes the time to figure out which are the most important. 12 is a good number to work with. Then you sit down with your sheet of paper that shows the number of your intention and rank them in order, what the intention is, and the key point, the date you intend to complete it. If we sit down and say that we want to lose 30 pounds and don't put a date down, it's not going to happen. It may not happen anyway. I can't tell you how many years I had that one. I eventually did, but it took a long time. If you want to get your doctorate or your master's degree, put down a day that you want to do it. If you want to achieve your distinguished Toastmaster, put down a date that you intend to achieve it. Now, the hardest part of this process is to get quiet again and think, what do I have to change within me to achieve this goal? We can sit here and we can write all these goals over and over and over again. And we can carry them around with us, which I'm also going to suggest. We can make a list. We can show the date. We can read them 3 times in the morning and 3 times in the afternoon and 3 times in the evening. I find driving the car is a great time to remember my goals, but I am a multitasker. I also read them in the bathtub because I like to lounge in the bathtub. I keep them taped to the mirror if there's not somebody in my household that's going to laugh at my goals. But I keep them where I am aware of them. But the thing I have to remember is, what do I need to change within me to achieve these goals? If I want to take a trip to South America and I don't have a passport, it's not going to happen. So I need to apply for my passport. I need to find out what I have to do. I need to get the money. I need to go to the post office, and I need to send it in. And it's going to take at least 6 weeks. It's good for 10 years. Go get it now. If you want to make a trip outside this country, go get your passport. Do whatever it takes to set the intention to achieve that goal. And continually ask yourselves, what do I need to change within me to allow this to happen? And listen and make those changes. If I have to stop eating foods I like to lose weight, and I don't do it, am I going to lose the weight? No. If I don't exercise, am I going to fit in those size 6 pants? No. I have to change that which is within me. So this process of achieving our intentions is setting the goals, finding the 12 most important ones, determining a date when we plan to achieve them, asking ourselves what we need to change to make it happen, repeating your goals to yourself at least 3 times a day, at least 3 times each time. Keep asking, what do I need to change? And when you achieve a goal, cross it off, celebrate, and add a new one. My intentions for 2009 have happened, and they happen with ease. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Linda, for that help in setting emotional intentions. And here's my goal card that I carry with me at all times. Very important piece of what Linda has shared with you. Are you comfortable dealing with conflict? What about confronting undesirable behaviors and situations head on? Carol Kormelink thinks that a good New Year's resolution is to resolve conflict. Carol has 52 years' experience confronting and resolving conflict. She's a member of 3 Toastmasters Club and can attest to how these skills can really help us in resolving conflict. Let's give a hearty welcome for Carol Kormelink, Resolving Conflict Through Confrontation. Carol?
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. As professionals, sooner or later, you are going to run into a conflict. We do not all think alike, and if we did, none thinks too much. And if you and I think exactly alike, one of us is unnecessary. So conflicts are inevitable. Anger, grudges, hurt, and blame are optional. I have had to learn to change from making blame and shame statements to making I statements. And I'm not promising that you will end all conflicts. I'm just saying that you can use confrontation to resolve the conflict if you confront or avoid. And confrontation does not need to be unpleasant or hostile. Con does not always mean against, as in pros and cons, for and against. Did you know it also meant with? Sure you did. Chili con carne, chili with meat, via con dias, go with God. If you've been in some of Gary's mall presentations, the nautical definition is to direct the steering of a ship. And you've heard him say, let's get this ship back on course. I want you to know that confrontation is a loving, caring act by an individual willing to resolve the difference at whatever cost and restore the relationship. Even if the misunderstanding is simple, it's good to confront early when just little small adjustments are needed. The 3 rules: confront early, confront often, and most importantly, confront respectfully. By confronting often, hopefully you can avoid a hostile environment that needs major surgery to repair the situation. For example, at home, how loving and caring did you appear to your teenager as they were ready to go out the door and you said, "Where do you think you're going in that?" I cleaned it up a little bit. When you focus on confronting respectfully, it's like adjusting the lens of a camera, the understanding of where the other person is coming from. And when you have that understanding, you allow that person to own their opinion. They do not own your opinion, and by allowing both of you to own your opinions, you have a better understanding where each is coming from. By keeping the end in mind, what you want to from this confrontation, you will ask yourself several questions. What do you want the relationship to do? Do you want it to resolve a conflict? Do you want it to end the relationship? How hostile is the other party? If you remember, confrontation is a loving, caring act by an individual to resolve the difference, you will minimize putting people on the defensive or making them angry when you request a face-to-face meeting with them. When people confront me when they need to set me straight, I always thank them. And somebody said, "Wow, that's the first time I ever gave somebody a piece of my mind and they thanked me." I said, "You thought enough of me to let me know what was making you unhappy, and then I could make some adjustment." But people, a lot of times, they will just cut you out of their life. You don't know why, because they do not know how to confront. If you have a personal conflict, I recommend that you role play with someone else. I have a lot of personal conflicts. I had a lot of personal conflicts with my husband. And I always, when I role played with someone else on something that I needed to do to talk with him about, I always took his part. Then I could hear what a person is saying to me when I'm telling him. I can know how that's going to affect me, and I can react differently and change the words. One of the things that I've learned is to learn to make I messages instead of you messages. You message is a blame and shame. For instance, "You never talk to me." That's attacking the other person. But if you use the I message, "I really need to talk with you. I'm feeling very lonely. I miss you. I really feel distance from you, and I need to feel closer to you." That's when you learn I messages. Attack. "You spend too much money." Discussion. "I'm really concerned about our finances." "You're always busy when I get home." I message. "I really want a big kiss hello because I missed you, or I feel that I matter and I make a difference in your life. And when you ignore me when you get home, I don't feel that way." something like that. Conflict leads to unity. It leads to change. Conflict is good when it is addressed. Unfortunately, some people do not know how to address it. One person, when I asked them what seemed to be upsetting them, well, if you don't know, I'm not telling you, bang, and hung up the phone. That does not resolve anything. So learn to the loving, caring act of confronting early, confronting often, and most importantly, confront respectfully. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Carol. It's now time to transition to the evaluation phase of our meeting. I can't think of anyone better suited to that task than Jerome Manigan. Jerome is our Vice President of Membership. He's a past president of Club 472. He's been a member of Toastmasters for 13 years and a charter member of TV Toastmasters. Jerome?
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. I would characterize today's meeting as interesting, informative, and entertaining. We're going to have evaluations of 2 of the 3 speakers. We're going to start that with Steve Ehrenhaus. Steve is a ATM Gold, Advanced Toastmasters Gold. He's the Vice President of TV Toastmasters, and he has been a Toastmaster since 1993. His memberships include TV Toastmasters and NIOSH. Steve Ehrenhaus.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator, fellow Toastmasters, and Linda. I'm evaluating Linda Ketchum's speech, Setting Our Intentions for 2009. Her objectives were to get comfortable with visual aids and to use them in a manner that was very natural as far as the presentation that she was giving to us. I thought you did very well with the visual aids that you chose to use with your speech today. One of the things I really liked was when you were talking to us about making the list, or when you were talking to us about some aspect of identifying what you would specifically want to write down. While you were talking, you had your pad and you had your pen, and you just were making gestures which flowed really well with what you were telling us to do. You had your page where you wanted us to see that you'd have your specific intention and then a date. And you held it up so that we could see it really well, even through the monitors on the camera. So I thought that was real good. I had a number of things here to evaluate you on for this speech. One of the ones that I couldn't evaluate was your use of computer visual aids, which isn't really a problem with today's speech because it wouldn't be appropriate for what you were talking to us about. Again, I thought you used good use of your pages, your pen. When you talked to us about having different size pages or notebooks, you had your little one here too. One of the things that I think that you might have done to make the speech a little more effective, and this really doesn't even have to do with your use of visual aids, but your voice and your tone was very conversational, but I think you probably could have added a little more vocal variety for the sake of emphasis. And when you were telling us some things like you need a specific date, you could maybe make that exclamation point on your page. One of the other things that I was looking for from when we spoke before the meeting started today, I thought your conversation, your presentation, and your thought process and stuff flowed very well. I didn't notice any of this. You were talking about one thing and then all of a sudden shifted direction, because you said that was one of the things that sometimes you do, and I wanted to look for that today and comment to you on it. Overall, I thought your use of the visual aids you selected fit very well with your speech, and I was really impressed with how well it just kind of flowed when you were talking to us about things and stuff to put down on your page or to put this up on your mirror, and you held it up like you were going to tape it up on a mirror, and I can appreciate that, where it's as long as somebody else doesn't think what you've got on there is something that they're going to critique you on. I really enjoyed your speech today, and I'm going to try and apply some of these things too. I like intention better than resolution. Mr. General Evaluator?
Thank you, Steve. Linda talked about setting Linda talked about setting intentions. Last year, at the beginning of the year, it was my resolution to lose 60 pounds, and I'm happy to say that I did, in fact, lose 60 pounds. Wow. My 2009 resolution is to lose an additional 35 pounds, and I believe that I will be able to do that. So, Linda, thank you very much for reinforcing the power of setting intentions. Our next evaluator is Laura Lee Gayfield. Laura is the Vice President of Education for TV Toastmasters. She's also a member of CIC. CIC stands for Cincinnati Insurance Companies, and she's also a member of the Mason Town Criers Toastmasters. She has been a Toastmaster for 4 years. Linda? I'm sorry, Laura. Excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator. I am evaluating Darren's speech, addressing the opposition. I wish I had a little bit more chance, now that I know what your topic was, how you arrived at that and what some of the other topics were that you had considered. But certainly the gas going from one extreme to another in the gas prices over the past 3 months is definitely a hot topic, and I liked the way that you got your speech started, because you started with a shocker. You got our attention that you were upset at $1.45 gas. So on the one hand, my brain as an audience member was thinking, oh, but this is wonderful. And on the other hand, I was also smiling that you were taking the opposite side. So I thought that was a pretty unique trait. And then you also talked about how the infrastructure for our roads and transit system needed to be overhauled, and then you got more detailed throughout the speech as to some of the different ways that could make that goal happen. I liked your personal stories, the changes that you had made from the 50 miles a day to a 20-mile-a-day one-way commute. A lot of people have done that. A lot of people may feel like they've had to go the other way, and I like the personal story that you gave of the changing habits that you did. One of the things, though, that I was kind of wondering about is, since you were mentioning that you had a 2-year-old, a typical, at least female, reaction to having a baby is now we have to have a minivan. And I kind of would have had to like a little bit more about your household car selections, perhaps. That would have been another great personal story. If you don't have a personal story like that, we used to say at home and garden party, borrow somebody else's, maybe a friend or a neighbor or a relative that had made some decisions. I think it's quite interesting. I live in Mason, and I see the Hummers driving around, and I swear one day I'm driving down the street, of course, especially a few months ago, and there was a for sale sign on almost every single one of them because gas was $4 a gallon. Now the for sale signs, I think, are off, and I'm kind of wondering if the gas prices go up to about $2, if they're going to start putting the for sale signs back into the windows of their Hummers. Something else that I thought could have been just a little bit more effective, you had done the research and figured out what the gas tax amount was. A couple of things to clarify on that. I was curious as to whether that was Ohio, Kentucky, or federal, because I didn't catch a particular statement on that. And I would have liked to have had the percentage of the gas, just pick a target price point, $1.75 maybe, to say, well, that's, I don't know, whatever it is, 10% of the tax, and maybe compare that to another tax that we currently pay, income tax, because that would have been higher than 10%, but that is lower than the current food tax. So those are a couple questions. I appreciate that you did take the feedback from the audience and repeat the questions that you were given from the audience. That helped, especially in our situation with being recorded, for our viewing audience to be able to understand what the question was and your answer. But I think you had a very good point of view. You gave arguments on pros and cons, and you'd thought about it long enough to be able to be proactive instead of reactive when people had questions or concerns the opposite way. Thank you very much, Darren. Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Laura. As the general evaluator, it is my responsibility to evaluate the meeting as a whole from the beginning to the end. I am supposed to point out things that will make the meeting better. I am to call on the evaluators, and I am to evaluate the evaluators. That is a whole lot to do in a very brief period of time. So let me start by first offering a toast to evaluators present, past, and future. You have resolved to be honest, helpful, supportive, nurturing, and caring in every evaluation you give to a fellow Toastmaster. For that, we say thank you. Now, we started the meeting 5 minutes after our stated published time. Not too bad, but I suppose that we can make some improvements. And one of the reasons why we are concerned about time is that this is taped, and we have to do this in, 57 seconds, 57 minutes, so that it can be edited and presented on media bridges and the Anderson Township cable system. Rick Barron was our Toastmaster. Rick, you were great. You're always very good as speaker, Toastmaster, so forth and so on. And again, today, you were excellent. Sheila Mudd Baker was the person who gave us the word of the day, resolution, resolution, resolution. I'm not being silly, Sheila. I just hope that I say resolution enough to get the resolution of the day prize. Her advice to us was to make a resolution. You might eventually achieve it. I think that's excellent, excellent advice. Tiffany Everett, area governor, gave us Tabletopics. We had responses from Gordon, Don, and Darren. We had visitors today, Roy Roberts and Joe Swirling. Very, very, very interesting topics, very informative information, and I think in some instances it was a very entertaining meeting. For those of you who are watching us via cable, we invite you to come out, join us, participate, have a good time, resolve, make it a resolution that you will join TV Toastmasters in 2009. Rick Barron, please. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jerome, for your leadership. Why not make it your intention for 2009 to help others by improving your communication, leadership, and public speaking skills by joining us here at TV Toastmasters? I'm grateful for the opportunity to have served you today, and we'll return the meeting back to our president, Darren Henderson. Thank you, Darren.
Thank you, Rick. We had such a full meeting today that we're going to make just one quick announcement, then we're going to adjourn the meeting. I'd like to thank all of you for joining us today, and it's been a great way to start out the new year. And with that, I'd like to adjourn the meeting of TV Toastmasters Club 9523.